This is why stress makes it very difficult for you to lose weight. Hi, I'm Dr. Zaldivar, and I managed to lose and maintain a 35-pound weight loss transformation despite struggling with weight and binge eating disorder and depression from the age of 12. I also quit my nutrition professor jobs at the University of Miami, Miami-Dade College, the American College of Sports Medicine, and elsewhere, so I could focus on reaching a wider audience online. The number one reason why people can't seem to be able to lose weight and then maintain it long term is because there always is something that happens that's usually stressful. Going on vacation, getting sick, getting an injury, having a busy day at work, being overwhelmed with certain tasks. It's almost always a stress-induced craving that pushes people to cheat on their diet and kind of push back that fitness and health goal into the future until they can deal with it. But the truth is, life will always throw all kinds of stressful situations your way. And so the more comfortable we get at dealing with stress, the more we can maintain and reach our fitness goals and no longer yo-yo diet and binge and relapse and start the cycle all over again. You see what happens when you get stressed out. You release the stress hormone cortisol, and cortisol burns through your dopamine stores. It drags your dopamine levels down, and every time you have this dip in your dopamine in your brain, this is what a craving is. This is this feeling where you feel like I need something, and it's usually some form of carbohydrate food, whether it's a bag of chips or cookies or cakes, something sweet, something carby. There are actually 6 different ways in which stress and cortisol release drops your dopamine levels. Number 1, cortisol blocks dopamine synthesis by blocking the enzyme that creates it. So it blocks tyrosine hydroxylase. Normally you get the tyrosine, which is a precursor, it's a type of protein that converts into L-DOPA, which then becomes dopamine. And tyrosine hydroxylase is the enzyme, which is a type of protein that has to be present in order for that conversion to occur. But cortisol blocks that tyrosine hydroxylase, so that reaction cannot take place in your brain anymore, and now you cannot create dopamine. And worse, cortisol also destroys your dopamine receptors, the D2 receptors in your brain cells, because normally you need to release dopamine and you have to have dopamine receptors, the D2 receptors, because normally you release dopamine from one brain cell and it has to attach to its receptor, the D2 receptor, on the cell surface of an adjacent brain cell. It's like a lock and key situation. But if you destroy your D2 receptors, now dopamine, even if it's being released, it has nothing to bind to, and so it feels as if there's no dopamine in your brain. Number 3, cortisol blocks this phasic response of dopamine, meaning when you accomplish a task or accomplish a goal, you're supposed to have this phasic release of dopamine. It's like a little spike of dopamine that gets released in your brain, and that makes you feel amazing, and that makes you want to repeat that task. So if you, let's say, got a great workout in, you release this phasic dopamine response, and now it makes you want to repeat that workout in the future. But when you have cortisol, it blunts that phasic, this elevation dopamine release, and so nothing really gives you joy anymore. So you're no longer motivated to get natural dopamine rewards from being productive, setting goals and accomplishing them. It's a state of anhedonia. Everything kind of feels like meh. It's like a low-grade type of depression. Number 4, cortisol also messes up with the function of the dopamine transporters. Dopamine transporters recycle dopamine. When it gets released from a brain cell, attaches to the D2 receptor on the adjacent brain cell, then it takes that dopamine from this gap in between the brain cells, is called the synapse, and puts it back into the brain cell, so you have it recycled. But cortisol messes with that, and so you don't have this recycling of dopamine happening. It's again as if you have very low dopamine effects or feelings. As if that's not enough, cortisol also shrinks and destroys the volume of your prefrontal cortex. This is the bedseat of willpower. So now you don't have as much willpower or discipline to be able to override the craving, to be able to override this natural instinct to reach for a cookie or a cake and destroy all the progress that you have made. And cortisol increases inflammation, and when you have increased inflammation in your brain, that also destroys the proper functioning of the dopamine brain cells or the dopamine neurons. And so again, all these things cumulatively lead to a state of a very low dopamine feeling. And whenever you're going through life with a deficit in your dopamine in your brain, it's going to feel like you're craving all the time. You can't seem to be able to clean up the diet. Not only that, when you're in a dopamine deficit, you have no motivation, you don't even want to work out or move your body. You just do the bare minimum so that you're not homeless pretty much. So when I figured all this stuff out, that's really how I managed to lose those 35 pounds that I had struggled with all my life, where I would lose and regain, and finally was able to lose it and then lose the most amount of weight that I've ever done, and more importantly, maintain it for a very long period of time. And I did that by raising my baseline dopamine levels, because I realized dopamine is the anti-stress molecule. The more dopamine you have when you get stressed out, it cannot drag your dopamine too much because you already have a surplus. So even if it drags it a little bit down, you still have a surplus of dopamine. And this was actually the topic of my 7-year dissertation for my Ph.D. in Exercise Physiology and Nutrition at the University of Miami. If you want to learn the protocols that I put together that work for me and that I teach my clients, you can find them in the fitness bundle. They are a series of 3 guides: Dopamine Brain, Monster Mindset, and Dopamine Body. And they teach you all the powerful tools that you can use to raise your baseline dopamine levels so that you have a surplus of dopamine, so that no stressful situation can ever bring you down. The fitness bundle is found on my website at drzaldivar.com/shop. Also, you can check out my coaching and group coaching. They're found on my website at drzaldivar.com/coaching and /group coaching. And I will send you a free copy of the diet that I personally follow at the moment, which is the carnivore diet. It's called the 30-Day Carnivore Diet Challenge Guide. And you can get a free copy when you sign up to my newsletter at drzaldivar.com/newsletter. The direct link to sign up to the newsletter is in the description box below. I hope this was helpful. Make sure you share it with a friend or family member that is struggling with their food, their weight, or maybe just their health. They might not need to lose weight, but they just cannot seem to change their habits. And it all has to do with understanding dopamine and stress and how we can raise our baseline dopamine levels. And if you want similar content like this in the future, drop a comment below and I'll make sure I film additional content around this topic. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.